Hi everyone! If this is your first time watching one of my videos, my name is Weykman and I'm a graphic designer for film and TV, sharing some of the work I've done in movies and TV shows. Right now, I'm doing a Queen Charlotte series as we wait for season 3 of Bridgerton. So check out my other videos if you like behind the scenes stuff, and if you're excited for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, make sure to subscribe because that'll be my next series. But before we get into it, I just need to say that different teams do things differently, so this will be reflecting mostly how we did it on the Queen Charlotte season. Because the show happens in the 18th century, we couldn't use modern looking paper, so we had to find the right paper for the letters. In this case, it's laid paper, which has these ridges and lines caused by the mold that makes them. In contrast, the regular smooth paper that we use today is referred to as wove paper. Another thing you'll find in laid paper is a watermark, as you can see here. And if you didn't know, this is also where we get the word foolscap from, because he had the watermark of a jester, hence a foolscap. After deciding on the type of paper, we ordered different samples in different textures and colors for various purposes. But for writing the letters, we had to think about two main things. It needed some texture for the antique look, but it couldn't be too textured that made it difficult to write. Because although I was the one practicing and doing the writing in the office, I wasn't going to be the only person doing it. Then I had to think about the handwriting style. I could have developed my own original way of writing for her, but the history nerd in me wanted to learn to write like the real Queen Charlotte herself. So I found her letters online and practiced how to write just like her. Because I was trained in cursive as a child and had a mother who was quite strict about me having good handwriting, this part of the process was not as difficult. I simply had to make my brain get used to the new capital letters and the quirks of her handwriting, so I set aside every capital I could find and saved them for reference. Moreover, a historical change I had to make was the letter S. In the 18th century, there were two of them. One was called a long S and the other was called a short S. The long S, as you can see here, is very similar to the letter F and can cause some confusion today, but it was standard back then. The use of this letter evolved over time and eventually came to an end in the 19th century. But in the early and mid-18th century, its use was more prominent compared to later. However, to keep things simple in the show, I followed these 4 rules. 1. The first S is long in words with a double S, like in essential, kindness, and miss. 2. Long S is used at the beginning of a word like in silver, stars, and symmetry. 3. Long S is used in the middle of a word like in ghost, desire, and music. And 4. Short S is used at the end of a word like in pious, Venus, and chaos. As for the rest of the writing, I let my brain learn it through repetition and muscle memory using a lightbox and tracing over the letters. Eventually, it got to a point where it became second nature to me. I also learned how to do her signature, which was sometimes just her name and other times had an R in front of it. This R is for the Latin word regina, meaning queen. King George also did the same thing, but in his case, the R is for rex, meaning king. I would also like to point out that her writing changed over time, which is normal for everybody. So if you look at references online, you will notice that 2 different letters from years apart will have slightly different handwriting, even if the same person wrote them. Now let's talk about wax seals. For the show, we used 2 types of wax, sticks and blocks, and each served a different purpose. The wax sticks are to be used with a glue gun, and the wax block needs to be melted in a more traditional way, like over a flame if done on camera, or if we were doing it in the office, we used a small chocolate melting pot. The wax sticks were great for when we had to make lots of letters that did not need to be opened, such as the ones used for set dressing. That's because the glue gun is easier to handle, and the wax does not require as much dexterity to use, which in turn makes performing the task much quicker. Also, we don't have to worry about the letters opening on their own, because it glues them shut. The only con of this method is that the seals end up looking a bit too round and perfect, instead of having a more naturalistic period look, which we get with the more traditional way of the wax block. Speaking of it, the wax block requires a bit more attention because if it's too melted, it spreads out like liquid, but if it's not melted enough, you get a small seal that is incomplete, so it needs to be just right. This method is used for practical letters that need to be opened on camera because it's easier to open without tearing the paper. It's also used by the actors when melting over a flame. Although, if you see a close-up of it, it's probably not them doing it, which I'll talk about more later. When it comes to folding the letter, there are different ways of doing it, but this is the one we used. If you want to watch a letter being folded the same way we did, I'm going to leave a link in the description to a video of it by Pumpkin Town Primitives, so check it out if you want to learn it. Now you may be asking yourself, if you wrote the letters, then how come we see her writing in the show? The answer is editing. Whenever you see a close-up of a letter being written or sealed, it was most likely me or a stand-in doing it. This is because although you only get to see 2 or 3 seconds of it, it actually takes a few hours to shoot. The lighting needs to be set up, the camera needs to be focused correctly, and other things need to be ready not only for the whole shoot, but also for each take. Because the actors are already too busy having to memorize lines, rehearse scenes, learn ball choreographies, do costume fittings, and more, stand-ins will sometimes do some scenes where the actor's face or presence is not visible. In this picture, you can see me at a desk getting ready to write on camera for a close-up shot. There was still one big problem though. Because I have white skin and India, the actress playing Queen Charlotte, doesn't, my hand and fingers could not be fully seen. So I had to hold the pen in a really awkward way to keep it from showing. However, they also brought in India's stand-in, who had the same skin color as her, for some takes where the hand was visible. So I had to teach her very quickly how to use the pen. But what about the handwriting style itself? This is when another element comes in, the paper itself. We had many copies of various versions of the letters. Some were fully written, some half-written, some had only a paragraph, and some were fully written but had no signature. And wherever the writing was missing on the letter, it wasn't actually missing. It was just faded enough for them to see and trace over it, but also for the camera to not be able to pick it up. Now you know how much work goes into a simple scene of a letter being written. It's an amalgamation of things such as research, design, practicality, functionality, filming, and editing. Not to mention, it's 3 different people doing the writing of one letter. Me, the stand-in, and India herself whenever her face is on camera. Besides the writing of the Queen's letters, I also did other types of calligraphy work for other graphics props, as you can see here. I hope you enjoyed this video and learning about some of the materials that we use to make some of these really cool props. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments, and if you'd like to see more, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye!